Hello, I am Elena Lopez, and I am an independent researcher and consultant. I've worked previously at the Harvard Family Research Project and later on at the Global Family Research Project. Most of my work has really focused on the family and community connection, and we've looked at the importance and roles of public libraries and after-school programs and early childhood programs in supporting families as they support their own children's learning and development. I think there is no better response to that question than one of the parents who contributed to this newly published book, which is A Librarian's Guide to Engaging Families in Learning. So let me quote from this parent who contributed to the volume. And she says, "The first time I took a tour of the library happened when my child was in preschool. The teacher brought the parents and the children to the library, and it was such a welcoming place, so I started going to the library with my kids. I am very thankful to the preschool teacher and the library because my daughters learned to love reading. And that has made them successful in school, especially in AP composition." What we have seen in our research is that these partnerships support, first of all, school readiness. There are library-sponsored story times and other preschool programs. Sometimes they are held in different languages. And so this enables parents, grandparents, and other caregivers to make use of an early learning and literacy experience. There is one example of a library in Massachusetts where Spanish-speaking families were requesting story times to be bilingual, but the librarians did not speak Spanish. So what the librarians did was to work with these parents to set up their own library bilingual story times, and it's all parent-led. And so I think this also, going back to your previous question, shows how PTA leadership can also apply to create new programs to better serve kids and families. I think that it takes time to build a relationship, and PTA leaders can take the initiative to learn more about their libraries. Go to the library. Librarians are very helpful. They're willing to talk to you about what their programs and services and their collections are all about. And it is through these conversations over time that PTA leaders can identify the areas that might be good for partnership and collaboration. Another thing too is that PTA leaders should be on the lookout for leadership opportunities within the libraries. Public libraries have advisory boards, and the members of the advisory boards come from the community. I think it's also important to think about community-wide learning beyond academic success, to have this broader view of how libraries and schools and PTA can create an environment where everybody is connected through reading and literacy. And there is this great example in the book called the One Read Project in Blount County in Tennessee. This is a predominantly white community, but when the school administrator visited a middle school and asked students, what would you recommend for students to read? One boy raised his hand and said, "Refugee" by Alan Gratz. And the school administrator worked with the teachers to make this, encourage students to read this book. It was popular among the students, and teachers noted how much they commented on it on their media platforms. And so the idea came up, why not extend this even further to the community? And so the school district partnered with the library to create a community reading event where everybody would be reading the One Read Broad book, Refugee. And it was quite successful. The friends of the library, as well as the businesses, did the fundraising so that the library could have multiple copies for the community, and each of the 4 middle schools would have book sets for the classroom. And a bookstore also did the ordering of the books so that they could get them at a discount. The library worked to bring the author to the library to give a presentation and to answer questions from the community as well as the students. The teachers encouraged the students to create project-based learning activities. This is, for me, a great example of how partnerships between schools, libraries, the business community, and others also in the community can create an environment that encourages reading not only among students but the entire community, and on a topic of diversity and inclusion in a community that was predominantly white. Several contributions to our book did mention that when they got feedback from the parents, one of the things that parents enjoyed about their participation in these library activities was that it gave them time to bond with their children. And that connection between parent and child is so important, especially as children grow older. I think that collaboration can also motivate parents to see themselves as leaders and as active in their children's learning. Another aspect of collaboration, which I think is important, is having the outcome of creating a community of support. It's the bonds that are created between and among parents and different family members. And we know that libraries offer ESL and adult education, oftentimes in collaboration with the school district. So this becomes a space in which parents can connect with one another and share information, sometimes about parenting and sometimes about their strategies to motivate their children to learn and to develop as good citizens and leaders in their own communities. In a partnership, 2 organizations such as libraries and PTAs have their strengths and assets, and you can use those strengths and assets to create the partnership. I think it's also important to think about approaching a partnership with a sense of humility, in the sense that even if organizations have their assets, the resources, for example, financial resources or staffing resources, might not be the same, and that you also have to work within certain limitations. Think about building on what the assets are rather than focusing on things that they do not have that you wish they had. It's also important, I think, to share lessons and promising practices, and not to feel so siloed, because I'm sure there are experiences working with students and families on both sides, on the part of the libraries, on the part of the PTA and the schools, where they can learn and build from their learnings to improve their programs and services for kids and families. Another thing that we've learned from the case studies is to be clear about their organizational roles from the beginning, so that each one knows what is expected and can fulfill that expectation within the resources available to that organization. So be clear about organizational roles and keep the communication going.